Good morning. Good morning. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I want to really thank the organizers of this conference for women in Pennsylvania. Tamala Edwards, Adam Grant, Annie Clark, they're all hard acts to follow. And even the introduction Chris Berner gave puts me on the spot. So right now, I'm a little anxious, but I'm so happy to look out at you because that makes me a little less anxious. And what I know about this conference is that you are here to be a part of a movement that will help all of us move forward together. Am I right? So I know Annie Clark just outlined some of the challenges for far too many women on campuses. And there's one thing that I just want to follow up and say and make very clear for women who are young women as well as women who are older like myself. This sexual violence on campus is not a new thing. It's not overblown. It is a critical problem that has gone on for years and too many years been left unattended. It is time, and Annie Clark is leading that movement, and I'm so glad to be able to see it in my lifetime. For nearly 25 years now, my testimony was in 1991. I started getting letters about this problem almost 25 years ago. And today, with the help of the Department of Education and with organizations like Annie's In Rape on Campus, we are finally moving forward to Title IX's promise of equal educational opportunity in all forms. So my challenge is that, my challenge is that of an educator. It's also my challenge comes as a woman, as a human being, as a lawyer, and people often don't put those two things together, human being and lawyers. But in all of those parts of who I am, my challenge is to remove assault, harassment, and any other obstacles that women have that stand in the way of gender equality for girls as well as for adult women. I am joined in this work by my law firm, Cohen, Milstein, Sellers, and Tolles, that helped me put together ideas about the litigation parts of this to end systemic discrimination, but also by the National Women's Law Center, on whose board that I sit, to help me understand how we can start to develop policies that will move the government and allow the government to be partners for women's equity. So in addition to hearing about sexual assault and harassment, and I hear from a lot of women, and that really is a privilege. I hear also about other experiences that they have. Being passed over for plum assignments in workplace, not getting hired from a position in favor of maybe a less qualified man. I hear about pay gaps. And of course, like you, I hear and read about glass ceilings. I'm hoping this is sounding familiar to some of you, because if it doesn't sound familiar, I can just stop right now. But I'm sure it is sounding familiar in terms of your workplace experiences, if not your own personal workplace experiences, the experiences that women you know have had. So let me just start. Of course, I hear a lot about harassment. These issues are happening on every workplace. It's not just that I'm targeting one or the other. They're happening on college campuses. And remember, the academy is supposed to be the liberal academy. And so it's ironic in many ways that this is still occurring on well-meaning places and places where it should not be the case. But in fact, that's what we have. Cosmopolitan magazine says that 1 in 3 women between the ages of 18 and 34 will have an experience of harassment. And now we have to add to that online harassment, something that I didn't have to experience when I was starting work. But it also happens to older women. And it happens that for many of them, the solutions lie with their employers, with their schools, and there are some good responses. There are mechanisms in many workplaces, investigations that are thorough and that weigh each side's motives and their truthfulness, and they come up with the right conclusions many times. But even sometimes when they do come with the right conclusions, what happens then is that harassers are given a slap on the wrist, right? They're sort of coddled. In some situations, they're saying, well, write a letter of apology to your employee that you've harassed. Or in the case of Roger Ailes, they may be even giving him a $40 million bonus. This is never appropriate. Harassers have to be held accountable. The EEOC convened a group of attorneys, business people, researchers, and advocates to study harassment in the workplace. And it was all forms of harassment. Now, I won't give you all of their conclusions, but one of the things that they made clear was that harassment causes psychological, physical, emotional, economic harms that can ruin employees' lives. And this is the primary reason that we want to end it in the workplace. But as well, there are direct business costs associated with harassment. Time, energy, and resources are diverted from work and go to legal representation, settlements, and litigations in court. And that hurts all employees. So ending harassment is everybody's business. And harassers must be either fired or demoted when they have engaged in severe or pervasive sexual or other forms of harassment in the workplace. This is the only solution that will put an end to the problem. Now, this report, this task force report, is available to you online. It's available online. It not only points out the problem, but it points out the importance of preventing harassment and how it can be done. And so I would recommend to you that if you or your managers have not looked at this report, this task force report, that you see to it that they've done. Go to them and demand that they make the changes that the EEOC task force recommends. The EEOC, now that's one thing that you can do. Go online, find the task force report, EEOC task force report, Google it, it's there, it's in plain language, it gives specific recommendations. Now, the EEOC deals with workplace discrimination, but I want to put forth a different starting point for ending discrimination against women and actually assuring women's pathway to equality. And in particular, I argue, just as Annie alluded to, that these issues don't start in the workplace. They actually start in elementary school. And that's where we have to begin to address them. Harassment and bullying occurs at the elementary level. You've seen some incidents of it. If you have children, you probably know of it. And often boys who don't fit a gender stereotype are the direct victims as well. So it seems to me if we don't start to curb the problem in elementary school, that we aren't going to have any chance of stopping grown-ups from behaving badly. If, in fact, they have been rewarded or allowed to pass with this behavior for years, they're not all going to just grow out of it. So we need to start looking at what is happening in our schools. And I believe that we need a task force, just like the EEOC task force, to address the problems earlier. So I'm going to move a little bit away from harassment, because harassment, as I said, is not the only problem that women are having in the workplace. And unfortunately, it's not the only problem that starts in elementary and secondary schools. According to the National Coalition on Women and Girls in Education, inequities that start in junior high school pave the way for lower income for women and fewer workplace opportunities throughout their lives. Over 40 years after Title IX was enacted to give girls and women equal educational access, we are still underrepresented in higher paying fields offered especially in vocational training programs. So this past June, the Department of Education issued a Dear Colleague letter pointing out to secondary and post-secondary schools what they need to do to achieve equity in high-growth fields for underrepresented women and men. Beyond mere access, schools are urged to revamp recruitment, promotional materials, admissions materials, counseling, and appraisal materials, among other factors. This is a very comprehensive report. So many of you may have children in schools. I want you to, again, Google this report, this Dear Colleague letter at the Department of Education's website. I want to ask you to find out if your school has implemented any of these guidelines. Guidelines issued by the Office for Civil Rights of the Department of Education. To me, parents, PTAs, and school boards should be urging principals and counselors to establish plans for how they're going to comply with these guidelines. Now, I just say this because it seems to me where equal educational opportunity is at stake, schools should not wait until a Title IX complaint has been filed. That's what has happened for years with sexual assault. Schools must be proactive, and you can move them in that direction. As parents, you have the right to do that. As individual members of the community, I hope you will feel the responsibility to do that as well. And I'm going to move quickly through why I came to thinking how important it is to link educational opportunities to career opportunities and see that really as a continuum. The pathways don't begin when you start a job. They really start with your educational experiences, and so do the obstacles. And are any of you out here in science, technology, engineering, or math fields? Can I see hands? Yes, there are a few of you. Thank you, good. Lots of conversation is being had around STEM. Correct? Women in STEM. We want to get more women in STEM. These are growing fields, and I agree we want to get there. But with all of that attention to STEM, what we have is information now about how hard and how high the obstacles are to having successful STEM careers for women. And it starts at schools. It starts with training programs. It starts really even in junior high school, but I'm just going to start with college programs. The studies show that science teachers in colleges are biased against women. There's a particular study that was a double-blind study that had a group of scientists, men and women around the country, look at applications for a position or for places in school at their institutions. And what they found was that in applications that had female-sounding names that were identical to applications that had male-sounding names, the scientists, these are people with scientific minds, graded women lower, same applications, same qualifications, but the women-sounding names were graded lower. They were offered less mentoring, and they were viewed as less competent. Now that is real bias. That is holding people back from even getting access. But even after you get access, even after you get basic training, there are problems. One study found, for example, now we're in Nobel Prize season, one study found that women have 90% less chance of getting hired by a Nobel laureate than men do. Now, we wonder why we see so many fewer women Nobel laureates, and this is part of the problem. What happens when women get into the lab? Well, and often they face situations where they are asked to do service work and not the creative work. Often, they get into these great jobs, but they end up getting 50% in some cases in starting salaries and startup packages than men get. Now, I'm not here just to pick on science, because there are some good employers. But what I am here to say is that science just gives us a window into some of the many things that are holding us back. In so many ways, women are treated as second-class citizens. And we know that if we start out with less salary, then the inequities are going to compound, and that over the course of women's experiences, they can lose hundreds of thousands of dollars and even millions of dollars in income because they never make up that salary. Now, science, as I say, is not the only problem, and gender isn't the only problem. The statistics and the studies on race show that racial inequities persist as well, and they too start as early as elementary schools and continue with lack of mentors and limited access to resources. In fact, Dr. Evelyn Hammond says, and this is why this is so important, she's a history of science professor at Harvard, says the race-gender science divide is one of the greatest threats to equality that we as a country face today. It results in limited economic opportunities and social opportunities. It also results in science that is not inclusive, that doesn't consider all of our lives and all of the scientific solutions that we are going to need for everyone. Now, if you're saying, well, you don't have this problem in your workplace, you don't have the sense that women are second class in your workplace, I'm really happy for you. But unfortunately, that is not the experience of a lot of women who I talk to. And I want to be clear here that when it comes to discrimination, I want us to know that women come in all races, all ethnicities, all sexual identities, colors and ages and sizes, and discrimination against one of us for any of those factors is tantamount to discrimination against all of us. So yes, I know these are huge systemic problems, and you say, well, where do I start? Well, I've already given you some ideas of where to start in your workplace as well as in your school. But some part of this requires you to push for better government policies, for better review process, for better investigations that lead to enforcing the law, to demand that your tax dollars don't support institutions and systems that hold us back. Lawmakers who understand the challenges that women face and who fight to make the difference on behalf of women. I say choose those lawmakers. There is lots of work for us to do, but I am hopeful. And this takes me back to nearly 25 years ago when I sat in a chair staring into the faces of a hostile Senate Judiciary Committee, members of which said that they had no idea that sexual harassment was a problem. Today, I stand in front of you, and you look so much better. And thanks to you, and thanks to our collective voices, no elected official will ever dare make that kind of claim again. Thanks for sharing your stories. Thanks for moving us forward. I'm privileged to hear from women who have succeeded, raising complaints on behalf of themselves and on others, and that is why I am hopeful. 25 years ago, I sat alone at the witness table with amazing friends and family behind me, and today, my family is even larger. Not my biological family, but it's growing too. But my family today includes all of the people who supported and believed in my right to testify and who believed in my experience and my right to tell about it. Despite the harsh treatment, despite the ruthlessness, people ask me, would you do it again? And my answer is yes. I would do it again. It was the right thing to do. It was important to do. And I am still standing today. And you are the reason that I am here today. And I am looking forward to that day when everyone can come forward, but I'm also looking forward to that day when women will no longer come forward because we worked on prevention. We worked on ending the obstacles, removing them. Yes, today I stand here and I will continue to stand and speak out. I was not really comfortable with this position 24 and a half years ago, being in front of you. But today I embrace it, and I am reminded of the words of Shirley Chisholm, who said, I was, am, and will always be a catalyst for change, and I hope you will join me. Thank you.